Hello and welcome to another tier list video. Today we are taking a look at SpongeBob characters. Now, when ranking characters in a show, there's a lot of things to consider, and the ranking is pretty subjective. So I'm going to be taking a look at how much do I feel that each of these characters add to the show when they're in an episode. So starting us off, we have Mr. Krabs. I mean, everybody knows Mr. Krabs. He's in probably the most episodes, I would say, behind SpongeBob and Patrick, maybe. You know, SpongeBob's boss, loves the money. Everybody knows Mr. Krabs. And honestly, it's really hard to go wrong. I really don't have any complaints about Mr. Krabs. Don't find him to be an annoying character at all. Always find he's pretty funny and just a good character to have in pretty much every episode. So really no complaints about Mr. Krabs. He's not my favorite, but he's definitely a good one. So he'll find himself solidly in the A tier. Not quite an S tier, but a solid A tier for Mr. Krabs. Up next, we have Sandy. Now, she's a character who's definitely not in as many episodes as someone like, you know, Patrick or even Squidward or Mr. Krabs. But when Sandy is in an episode, she adds a lot of value. Some of my favorite episodes of all time are episodes that kind of revolve around Sandy Cheeks. And especially one of them where SpongeBob and Patrick are trying to survive the winter in Sandy's house, and she's hibernating. I mean, that's one of my favorite episodes. So there's a lot of really good episodes as well with Sandy where kind of the whole episode revolves around her character. So Sandy for me is going to be an S tier. She's not in every episode, but pretty much every one where she is, she always adds a lot of value. Up next, we have Mermaid Man. Now, Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy, I'm going to kind of review together because I can't really think of any episode where they just have one of them and not the other. They're pretty much always a pair. And there are some pretty good Mermaid Man and Barnacle Boy episodes. That being said, I don't think they add a whole lot every time they appear. And I will say I like one more than the other. I definitely like Mermaid Man more than Barnacle Boy. I find Mermaid Man, even just his character and his shape, to be a bit funnier. I love the touch of the fuzzy pink slippers. So Mermaid Man, he's going to find himself in a B tier, but Barnacle Boy, unfortunately, going to find himself down in the C tier. Up next, we have the Flying Dutchman. Now, this is a guy who doesn't make an appearance very often. Probably one of the least frequent characters on this list. But when he does show up, man, it is a good episode. If he's on screen, you know that you are in a good episode. Pretty much every single episode that has the Flying Dutchman in it is an absolute banger. If you see him anywhere in the preview for an episode, you gotta sit down and watch that one. The Flying Dutchman, great character, super funny, makes the episode better in pretty much every way. Flying Dutchman, gonna be an S tier for me. Up next, we have Squidward. Squidward is another one, kind of like Mr. Krabs and Patrick, one of those core characters that you see in almost every episode. And I will say, there are some episodes where I'm not a huge fan of Squidward's character, or I find him kind of to be misplaced. But there are some of my favorite episodes that Squidward is a central part of, and I think he's super funny and just a really important character. Especially the one where they get stranded in, I think, the kelp forest, and they're worshipping the magic conch. Great episode. If you haven't seen it, go watch it right now. Squidward, he's not great in every episode, like I said, but he has some really good ones, so he'll find himself in the A tier. Up next, we have Gary. Obviously, SpongeBob's pet. Finds himself in a lot of episodes. Usually doesn't have an important role. There are a couple episodes that revolve completely around Gary, but most of them do not. I would say he's a good minor character. You know, obviously he can't really talk. He kind of just does that weird meowing. But, you know, for the fact that he's just a pet and not really a actual main speaking character, I think he's still pretty good. But because of the fact that he can't talk, I think he's limited in how much value he adds to an episode for me. So he'll find himself in the B tier. Up next, we have Harold. Now, this guy, if you don't know him, he shows up occasionally in episodes. I would say probably 1 in 4, maybe 1 in 5 episodes. Usually it's SpongeBob doing something that just pisses him off. I mean, his life is miserable in Bikini Bottom, let me tell you. Pretty much anytime SpongeBob does something that ruins or pisses off somebody else, Harold is usually on the receiving end of that. But man, I love Harold. I love his tirades. Adds a lot to the episodes. I wish he was in more episodes. Harold, gonna find himself in the A tier. Up next, we have Pearl. I'm really not a fan of Pearl. If you don't know, she's Mr. Krabs' daughter, and I would say she doesn't add a whole lot of value to the episodes. Sometimes she has something funny, but usually she just plays a very minor role in the episode, and I find her character to be just kind of a bit whiny and a bit annoying, so I'm actually not much of a fan of Pearl. she's gonna find herself in the F tier. So sorry if you're a Pearl fan out there, but I'm personally really not a big fan of Pearl. Up next, we have SpongeBob. I mean, this one, you gotta know where this is going. The show is literally called SpongeBob SquarePants. You can't have an episode of SpongeBob SquarePants without SpongeBob SquarePants. So SpongeBob, rightfully gonna find himself in the S tier. I mean, there's just no debating that one. He's gotta be up there. Up next, we have SpongeBob's family. We have his dad, his mom, and his grandma. Now, his mom and his dad, I would say, are pretty similar in terms of the value that they add to the episodes. Usually, if one is there, usually the other one is there as well. That being said, I find that even just the art style of his mom looks like way more appealing than his dad. I mean, look at this picture of his dad. Like, just like no effort put into it. And then his mom, it's like, look at that. We got all these features. So for that reason alone, honestly, I'm going to put the mom in the B tier and the dad in the C tier. In terms of the value that they bring to the episode, I think it's the same, but the art style of the mom is just like way better than the dad, so that's how that'll shake out. Up next, we have SpongeBob's grandma. I love SpongeBob's grandma. I mean, grandmas are great, and SpongeBob's grandma is no different. She's not in very many episodes, but the episodes that she is in, she's usually super funny, so she's going to find herself in the A tier. Up next, we have Plankton. Now, he is also one of the main characters, not in quite as many episodes as someone like a Squidward or a Patrick or a Mr. Krabs even. But he's definitely in a lot of episodes, always trying to steal the secret formula. And I really feel that he adds a lot to the episodes. I mean, the episodes that specifically surround Plankton's character, I usually find are really good. And so Plankton, gonna find himself solidly in the A tier. Up next, we have Karen, the computer, which is Plankton's wife. I will say she's kind of funny, and I just think it's funny that Plankton's married to a computer, personally. That being said, I don't think Karen adds a whole lot to the episodes. I mean, she never really has a episode that revolves around her character, so it's hard to really put too much value on her, but she is fairly interesting, and I think she adds some benefit, but just because she really doesn't have a whole lot of impact in the show, she'll find herself in the C tier. Up next, we have Larry the Lobster. I mean, come on. You gotta love Larry the Lobster. The guy is jacked. He's funny. Every episode he's in is a good one, and really he deserves more screen time. Larry the Lobster, gonna be in the S tier, no doubt about it. Up next, we have Mrs. Puff. Now, Mrs. Puff, honestly, if you took her lines from one episode and put them in another, you probably wouldn't even know, because every single episode with Mrs. Puff, she is saying and doing the exact same stuff in every single one. Sure, sometimes it's funny, but it's usually just her saying, "Oh, Neptune," and then inflating, and then telling SpongeBob that he failed his boating test. I mean, pretty much every single episode with Miss Puff is the exact same in terms of the things she does and how she interacts with the characters, so not a huge fan. She's not quite as bad as Pearl for me. Again, sorry to you Pearl fans out there, but Mrs. Puff gonna find herself in the D tier. Up next is Patchy the Pirate. Now, he's more of a rare occurrence. You know, I would say he shows up in the occasional episode, but typically I've seen him show up in the movies as well. And, you know, he's very different because he's not actually in the Bikini Bottom like the rest of the characters, so he's kind of hard to rank, but I feel that when he does show up, it's usually for a good reason. It's usually a good episode if Patchy the Pirate is there, so Patchy gonna find himself in the B tier. He's good, adds value, but, you know, not being a character in Bikini Bottom, it's really hard to have too much impact on how good an episode is. Last, but certainly not least, we have Patrick Star. I mean, this guy is great. SpongeBob's best friend. There's so many good episodes with Patrick. I will say he's, you know, a little lackluster in some episodes, but the vast majority of the time, he's great, adding a lot of value. Patrick gonna find himself in the S tier as well. Well, that's my list. Let me know your guys' thoughts, and I hope you enjoyed.